In this video I will show you how to replace the right side CV axle on 2011 to 2014 Hyundai Sonata vehicles. Step number 1. Park the vehicle on a flat surface, set the parking brake and place blocks in front and behind the rear wheels for safety. Lift the front of the car using a hydraulic floor jack and place jack stands under the chassis for safety. 2. Remove the passenger side wheel lug nuts using an impact tool and a 21mm socket. Once the lug nuts have been removed, proceed to remove the wheel. 3. Remove the cotter pin from the CV axle nut with pliers as shown in the image. 4. Remove the CV axle using an impact tool and a 32mm socket. Use a pry bar to block the hub and prevent it from turning so that one end of the bar passes diagonally between the wheel studs and the other end of the bar touches the floor. 5. Remove the washer by pulling it outwards with a flathead screwdriver or using a magnet. 6. Remove the cotter pin from the lower ball joint safety nut with needle nose pliers as shown in the image. 7. Remove the bolt and nut that hold the lower ball joint using a ratchet or an impact tool and a 14mm socket and a 14mm wrench respectively as shown in the image. 8. Insert a flathead screwdriver into the vertical slot where the screw was so that it opens slightly and then lever the lower control arm down with a pry bar to disconnect the lower ball joint from the steering knuckle. 9. Pull the brake disc outwards with one hand and use a bar to lever the CV axle inwards to separate the CV axle from the wheel hub. 10. Place a clean container under the transmission and remove the damaged CV axle shaft by levering it outwards with a pry bar as shown in the image. Note: use fast movements to ensure that the snap ring that secures the CV axle to the transmission doesn't get damaged. Once the inner side of the CV axle has been released, proceed to remove it completely with your hands. 11. Coat the inner lip of the axle seal with transmission fluid and proceed to install the new CV axle in its original position, ensuring that the snap ring fully engages to prevent the CV axle from sliding out while driving. 12. Slide the outer end of the CV axle through the wheel hub, pulling the disc outwards with one hand and inserting the shaft with the other hand as shown in the image. 13. Connect the lower ball joint with the steering knuckle in its original position, making sure that the notch in the ball joint aligns correctly with the bolt that holds it in place. 14. Install the ball joint bolt and nut and tighten them to the specs listed in your owner's manual and install a new cotter pin respectively. 15. Install the new washer and nut on the CV axle and tighten the nut partially by hand. 16. Use a pry bar to block the wheel from turning and proceed to tighten the axle nut completely according to the specifications listed in your owner's manual. Clean the inner and outer side of the disc brake rotor using brake cleaner. 17. Install a new cotter pin on the axle nut. Reinstall the wheel on and partially tighten the lug nuts. 18. Lower the vehicle to the ground and proceed to tighten the wheel lug nuts according to the specifications listed in your owner's manual. Start the engine and check the transmission fluid level. Add transmission fluid if needed. 19. Take the vehicle for a test drive to ensure that everything works correctly and there are no abnormal noises present. That's how simple it is to replace the right side CV axle on 2011 to 2014 Hyundai Sonata vehicles.